John Solomon is an award-winning investigative journalist. He's an author, he's a digital media entrepreneur, and he serves as the chief executive officer and editor-in-chief of Just the News. Before founding Just the News, Solomon played key reporting and executive roles at some of America's most important journalism institutions, such as the Associated Press, the Washington Post, the Washington Times, Newsweek, Daily Beast, and The Hill. I've followed John for years. I believe he is America's #1 investigative reporter. In fact, he was instrumental to informing America about Hunter Biden's corruption. He's likely President Trump's favorite journalist, and he has a plan to remake media in America. So we will be informed, entertained, and enlightened once again. Welcome, John Solomon, back to the Economic War Room.
Yeah, good to be with you, Kevin.
Well, it's great to have you. All right, I want to jump right into it. There are all these stories about the 2016 coup attempt. It was Russiagate, but then it turned out to be a complete fabrication and an attempted coup against the incoming president. Can you explain basically what's going on?
Yeah, let's try to make it an elevator speech for people who don't have to get into all the details. There's always been political dirty tricks in politics. That's part of elections, and you try to put opposition research out there. You try to get the voters to change their mind about someone. This went farther than that. It was Hillary Clinton coming up with a political dirty trick to make Donald Trump look like he had a Russia problem when Donald Trump didn't have a Russia problem. But then she enlisted and engaged the use of our intelligence and our law enforcement communities, the FBI and the CIA, to carry out that ruse, to give it legitimacy, to cause people to have their civil liberties violated, to have their freedoms put at risk, to have their reputations destroyed on a false political dirty trick. That is a Rubicon that we have never before passed in American history, and it's why this one is so different. And it sets in motion then a 10-year process of doing the same thing over and over. Democrat has a problem. Hillary Clinton has an classified email problem. Joe Biden has a corruption problem in Ukraine with his son. Joe Biden has a classified documents problem in his garage and in his private office. And in each of those circumstances, they instead clear those people, don't give them any consequence, and they use the machinations of government, the FBI, the special prosecutors, the intelligence community, to make it look like Donald Trump has a similar or worse problem. In the case of Russia collusion, completely invented. In the case of Hunter Biden, the Ukraine impeachment, completely invented. In the case of the classified documents, yeah, Trump has some classified documents in his place, but he was allowed to declassify and take them, and Joe Biden wasn't. But they criminalized Donald Trump, and they let Joe Biden walk. So now what's happened is the body of evidence has given rise to an FBI investigation called the Grand Conspiracy Case. And it looks at the last 10 years and that wash, rinse, and repeat cycle I just laid out as one ongoing criminal conspiracy to deprive Americans of their civil liberties under the color of government authority. And now a grand jury has been impaneled, a strike force has been put in place, and an FBI conspiracy case has been opened. So it has gotten real serious real quick.
This all lends itself to my belief that the Obama administration was, in fact, the most corrupt administration in history. They tend to claim, scandal-free, but it wasn't scandal-free. I mean, we've got Hillary Clinton's email problems. That tied into this based on what you just said. Can you explain that and why they had to do what they did to attack President Trump?
So the U.S. intelligence community actually intercepted communications of the Russians who had been spying on Hillary Clinton's plan. And what the Russians decided, or what they learned from their spying on the Clinton campaign, is that Clinton personally approved a plan in July 2016 after James Comey magically waved a wand and said, "You're absolved of your email problems." She had been using a private server and moving highly classified information through it in violation of federal protocols and likely in violation of the Espionage Act, but she was cleared of it because James Comey decided he just wasn't going to prosecute her. Now, he didn't have that authority. He was the FBI director. He had no right to do that, but he did it anyways. As soon as Hillary gets cleared, she wants to change the subject in America from the email scandal, which she's been dogged by for almost a year, to something that would put Donald Trump on the offensive. And so with Christopher Steele and other Democratic lawyers and researchers, they go about telling a false story to the American public that Donald Trump is a stooge of Putin and he's conspiring with Putin to steal the 2016 election. And the intercepts from the Russians that the U.S. intelligence community gets, Hillary Clinton acknowledges the whole reason they're doing this Russia ruse is to take the subject off of her and her wrongdoing, to change the topic in America. That intelligence is so compelling that they briefed President Obama in July, and they briefed the entire intelligence community heads before the FBI decides to open up their criminal investigation of Donald Trump. And by the way, the FBI's criminal investigation of Donald Trump is based almost entirely on Hillary Clinton's accolades funneling their fake information into the FBI.
Well, then you've got CrowdStrike, and apparently they were functioning as a part of the Democrat National Committee. And then you have this tragic death of a murder of Seth Rich. Does that tie into this? Do we really know what happened to Seth Rich?
Yeah, I think the murder is probably what it was, a murder on the streets of Washington, D.C., which sadly happens far too often here. It's a very unsafe city. I don't think there are connections right now. People have hinted at it. I don't think from what I've seen thus far, unless something changes, that is, I think the D.C. government believes that that might have been a gang initiation hit or some sort of criminal activity. I think there is some video footage off of street cameras that gives them some sense of what happened. But, you know, it's easy to get beyond the facts and speculate, and there's a reason to do that. We were denied the truth for a long time, so people start grasping at straws. What is clear is what we do have a factual basis for is that the President of the United States, Barack Obama, knew that Hillary Clinton was going to carry out this dirty trick in advance. He didn't stop it. He allowed his FBI to weigh in on it. He allowed his CIA to create an intelligence committee assessment that by all accounts was misleading and false. And he didn't stop it. And at the very end of his presidency, when the FBI had determined that President Trump's national security advisor, Mike Flynn, who got caught up in the dirty trick, was innocent of all crimes, he didn't deserve to be further investigated. The FBI made that conclusion. In January 2017, Barack Obama presided over a meeting to figure out how they could keep Mike Flynn on the criminal hook and keep him in trouble and dirty up the start of the Trump administration. A United States president by the name of Barack Obama presided over that meeting. After all the things I just described, that's why there's a criminal conspiracy case now opened.
Well, it is an amazing criminal conspiracy case. It's probably the greatest scandal in modern times. This is maybe the biggest story of this century so far. And we've got so many things, like Peter Strzok and his text messages with Lisa Page and so forth. We're going to have to cover all of this. There's so much more I want to ask you, John. We need to take a break. When we come back, I want to ask you, what would have happened if none of this had come out, if Hillary Clinton had been treated like every other person would have been treated with that email scandal, and what impact it had on the last election, and how many lives have been damaged as a result? In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com.
Gold holds its value far better than the US dollar. Let's see what happens when I go in this sweet shop and pay with gold. Can I pay with gold?
I mean, you can wait, find out how much it costs.
Do you know what? Basically, do you know why I'm even using gold?
I do not.
It holds its value over time, but it's a bit difficult to spend, isn't it? Do you take this?
Yes.
That's MasterCard. Yeah, but this is I'm actually going to pay with gold, believe it or not. Using this. That's my MasterCard, and it's linked to my gold wallet. So let's just watch that. Authorizing. Yeah, add a tip.
Thank you.
So this is your store?
Yes, sir.
And how much gold did I pay?
0.2243 grams.
Yeah, success. Bought with gold, paid with glint.
We're speaking with the great John Solomon, and he is bringing truth to the American people. He's shining a big flashlight where no one else has looked before and bringing out day after day new revelations of the greatest conspiracy of our lifetimes. That is the conspiracy to control the government using the intelligence community, using dirty tricks, but far beyond that, and many lives were harmed as a result. Right before the break, I mentioned Peter Strzok and his text with Lisa Page. John, could you tell us who Peter and Lisa are, what they were doing, and what are the implications of those texts?
Yeah, absolutely. So Pete Strzok was the top counterintelligence agent at the FBI assigned to opening and conducting the Operation Crossfire Hurricane investigation, the investigation into Donald Trump and collusion. He has a illicit relationship with one of his colleagues at the FBI, a lawyer who is working for the deputy FBI director, Andrew McCabe. Her name is Lisa Page. They have an affair. It's pretty obvious what went on in their text messages. And they have very strong anti-Trump sentiments expressed in those text messages. And all along, as they're investigating Donald Trump, even though they recognize there's no there there, that's Pete Strzok's own words, or Lisa Page, I can't remember who texted who, but they basically don't think there's any Russia collusion there. They allow this investigation to keep going down the tracks and therefore leading the American public. And so they're essential operators in the FBI that allowed Crossfire Hurricane to go from a Hillary Clinton dirty trick where you dump some opposition research on the FBI to eventually a special prosecutor investigation that consumes 3 years of Americans' lives, that eats up the first half of the first Trump presidency with a fake scandal, and which cost millions of dollars of legal bills to people who were ultimately innocent. And so they're the main operators on the front line. And you asked earlier if Hillary Clinton was just some woman who decided they wanted to get at their boyfriend and report a fake crime to them, what would happen to that woman? She would be charged. She'd be charged with filing a false report for whatever personal reason that person had. Hillary Clinton has skated thus far, even though her campaign elaborately dumped all of this information into the FBI, what ultimately turned out to be a complete fake scandal. Remember, both Robert Mueller and John Durham, two special prosecutors, both concluded there was no evidence of a criminal conspiracy between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. It never existed. And Durham went further, saying there wasn't even a lawful basis to open up the entire investigation on Donald Trump. That rests at the feet of Hillary Clinton and her team.
Well, and apparently people in the FBI, because I've got this text, August 18th.
Sure.
Trump's not going to become president, right? Right? Yeah. Well, desperate from Lisa Page, and Peter Strzok says, no, he's not. We'll stop it. How could the FBI stop the this is August. How could they prevent the American people from voting for and electing Donald Trump? The only way would be something like they did.
Yeah, listen, that's what the Russians intercepted. Either the Russians had an extraordinary crystal ball and they could project the future with some magic spy tool they had, or they really were sitting on Hillary Clinton's phones and email and figuring out what it is. That's why that intelligence that's been released by Tulsi Gabbard is so explosive. In July, the Russians know, and then the Americans know, that Hillary Clinton's plan is to enlist the FBI. The FBI is going to open up an investigation and throw, quote, fuel on the fire. In other words, give credence to a bogus set of allegations by investigating them as real. And that's exactly what happens. How would the Russians know that in advance unless they truly were sitting on Hillary Clinton's emails? Either that or they had some special machine that could see the future before anyone else could.
And of course, she broke the law, allowing her email to be easily captured like it was and so forth. Yeah. I was in New York in the FBI office during the Obama administration, probably 2012, 2013, sometime like there, and I was briefing them, and I got pulled aside by the lead agent who used to run the office in New York. And under Obama, they took that from him and gave it to the analysts that were all political appointees that all had a politicized version of things. And they essentially, the lead agent said, the FBI's ruined, because it's no longer agents, it's analysts, and analysts report to politicians. So that we saw that play out here, which is very dangerous. What happens if your intelligence community is co-opted by your political class?
You stop being the greatest constitutional republic in the world, which the American government has long been viewed as, and you suddenly become a banana republic that looks just like the Latin American dictators or the Eastern European Soviet dictators. That is the abyss that we dangle over at this moment. We have not punished this behavior in 9 years, even though increasingly we have overwhelming evidence of what happened. And I said in 17 and 18, if we don't punish this conduct, the temptation to do it again will be greater. And that's what happened. You had someone file a whistleblower complaint on Ukraine to protect Joe Biden from the Ukraine stuff, and it was bogus. You had Joe Biden be discovered with classified documents. They kept that secret and pursued Donald Trump to make it look like Donald Trump had the classified documents problem. Once we crossed that Rubicon in 16 with Hillary Clinton and James Comey and John Brennan and the others, if you don't punish it, the temptation to make it the norm becomes extremely high. And now we have 3 or 4 iterations of this wash, rinse, repeat cycle that where the intelligence community and FBI, which kept out of election politics, are now integrally involved in putting their thumb on the scale. And that removes us from being a good, healthy constitutional republic, and it makes us look and act like a banana republic.
Well, it certainly looked like a banana republic when they raided Mar-a-Lago.
Sure.
Other than just trying to show that there were classified documents there, did they have another purpose? Were they looking for specific documents that might prove them guilty? What were they looking for in Mar-a-Lago?
There are some people who believe, like Devin Nunes, the former House Intelligence Committee chairman, who now runs President Trump's Truth Social platform, that they were looking to see if they could find the Russia collusion documents. If that is proven, and by the way, I haven't found evidence of it yet, I've certainly seen hints of it, but I don't. But if they were looking for that, it clearly ties it back to the beginnings of this entire 10-year cycle. But you don't need that. You don't need that to prove an ongoing conspiracy. If Jack Smith's modus operandi was to be political as a prosecutor, and if the intelligence analyst who wrote the fake Ukraine allegations was politically motivated, if the people who took the investigation on for the FBI and legitimized a bogus story from Hillary Clinton are acting political under the color of government authority, it's considered one ongoing conspiracy, and there's one common victim. It's Donald Trump in each of those 3 instances. So while some people hope they will find and believe they will find that Jack Smith, or it was actually before Jack Smith, but the FBI was looking for Russia collusion documents there, it isn't integral to the FBI's grand conspiracy case. What is integral is that the same agencies, sometimes the same actors, use their color of a government authority to deprive Americans of their civil liberties, deprive the Americans of a fair election, and abuse the tools that we gave these agencies only to fight counterterrorism and counterintelligence threats, not to tip elections in the favor of one party over the other.
Okay, we're going to have to take another break. When we come back, we're going to pick right up there.
Oh, hi, I'm Kevin Sorbo, and I'm here to tell you about coffee. Well, not really, but I'm going to use coffee to illustrate my point. Here we have several different coffees, each with its own unique characteristics. First, we have instant coffee. This coffee pretends to be coffee, but it's not really coffee at all. It's a fraud. Plus, it tastes terrible. I'm out. Next, we have woke coffee. Their coffee actually tastes pretty good, until you find out that when you drink it, you have to admit that you've oppressed other coffees in the past. Insanity. I'm out. Next, we have Big Tech Coffee. Now, these guys used to encourage folks to share with others what they thought about their coffee. But now, if you say you don't like Big Tech Coffee, they'll take away your coffee pot. I'm out. This brings us to Patriot Mobile Coffee, right? This is one big cup of truth and freedom. There's no fraud here. Patriot Mobile is America's real Christian conservative wireless provider. Patriot Mobile gives back millions of dollars every year to organizations that are on the front lines fighting for our freedoms. Patriot Mobile offers the best nationwide 4G and 5G coverage on the same networks as the other major carriers. So you'll get the same great coverage, along with 100% US-based customer support, while knowing you are supporting a company that shares your conservative values. Switch to Patriot Mobile today by visiting patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT.
John, right before the break, you were talking about how this is one long grand conspiracy, same actors, same victim. It's a RICO type conspiracy. Why is that so important to document that and prove that? Why does that make a difference that it's one long instead of a series of separate instances?
Yeah, because we have a thing in the our laws that say that crimes expire after a certain amount of time. They're called statute of limitations, and normally, if you're not caught within 5 years of committing a crime, you're not allowed to be prosecuted. The statute has expired. But when you have a conspiracy case, if you look at something that occurred in 2022 or 23 and 23, the raid of Mar-a-Lago, the appointment of Jack Smith, even though he wasn't qualified to be a special prosecutor according to the courts, we now have an Office of Special Counsel investigation questioning whether, from a whistleblower, that Jack Smith may have acted in a political manner. That's important. You can take that and say that's the end of a long conspiracy, and it's connected all the way back to what began in July of 2016 when Hillary Clinton is cleared of her emails and Donald Trump's falsely accused of Russia collusion, and say this is one ongoing conspiracy. In that scenario, the 2016 events, which on their own could not be charged anymore because the statute of limitations has expired, suddenly can be counted towards a RICO or racketeering or criminal conspiracy case. So you extend the statute of limitations by treating it as one ongoing conspiracy. The other thing you can do is you don't have to bring this case, the grand jury investigation, in the Washington, D.C. Why? Because Washington, D.C. is a 92% Democrat town. It was unwilling to convict people that John Durham found he believed had lied to the United States government. They got acquitted anyways. The juror in that case said, we think they lied, but we're not going to charge it because it's Donald Trump. And we're not going to convict him because he was Donald Trump. So you get out of that potential jury pool bias and you potentially go to a place like Florida, which is a much more 50-50 state or 55-45 state, not 92-8. And you place the grand jury there because the most recent acts of the alleged conspiracy occurred there, the raid on Donald Trump's house. And then everything that happened before it gets charged in Florida. So those are two reasons why now that's being looked at the Justice Department.
Well, if you could do that and you say, absolutely, you can try it in Florida and the statute doesn't, then you could bring Secretary Clinton, you could bring the FBI leaders, you could bring Brennan and Clapper and all of them in. But you can't bring President Barack Obama, who likely was a key part of all of this because he can't be charged from official acts. So what do you do with President Obama?
Yep, that is an excellent point, and I've been arguing that. Some of my colleagues in the media aren't as convinced as I am. But listen, the immunity ruling is pretty sweeping, and there's no chance that the Justice Department is going to charge him based on my reporting. Now, that changes Barack Obama's status. For instance, Barack Obama will not have the ability, if he is subpoenaed to a grand jury. By the way, immunity doesn't mean you're immune from being a witness. You can be compelled to testify. You're still a citizen of the United States. If President Obama is subpoenaed for documents, he has to turn them over. If he's brought before the grand jury, he has to tell the truth, and he cannot claim his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination because he has no risk of prosecution. And if he were then to lie in the grand jury as a private citizen about acts that occurred when he was the president, he potentially would open himself up to true legal liability. So Barack Obama's in a tough spot as a witness who has to tell the truth or face consequences. And another part of it is he also could be named as an unindicted co-conspirator. You could say, these other people did it and Barack Obama was in on it. We can't charge him, but we're going to show how he played or authorized or encouraged or failed to stop something that he knew to be wrong. That is something that could give prosecutors an extraordinary weapon. What matters to a former president? Their legacy. This could potentially change Barack Obama's legacy for the history books in a major way.
You know, the irony of all this is I believe he set a perjury trap for General Flynn, who's a good friend, and here he could be subject to himself a perjury trap, which is
a great point.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic and maybe poetic justice. Now, when President Obama moved back to Washington or got a residence in Washington when President Trump was first inaugurated, it was a resist effort. They called it a resist effort. And yet, do you think he was there to advance his political beliefs, or do you think he was there to make sure that the government conspiracy continued?
You know, it's hard for me to know. One of the problems is we don't have complete visibility on everything Barack Obama did. Now, we're looking at all the interview transcripts of Barack Obama in 16 and 17 to see sometimes people trip up. They don't know what they said or they forgot what the cover story was. So we're going through that now, and I wouldn't be surprised if we found some interesting stuff in that. We just did that with Hillary Clinton. So this new intelligence comes out, and Hillary Clinton's like, that's Russian disinformation. I didn't approve any plan to go after Donald Trump. And you go through her book, you go through her speeches, you go through the op-eds of her top lieutenants, John Podesta, Jennifer Palmieri, Robbie Mook, and they're like, oh yeah, no, she approved a plan. This is exactly what we did. You can catch a politician lying that way. And I think in the case of Hillary Clinton, she has a signed confession in 16 and 17, what she did, and she's not going to be able to run for it, even though the New York Times might right now try to give her cover story out there without telling us that, hey, she said these other things in these interviews. We're doing that now because that's good journalism. We're doing that with Barack Obama. I don't think we know enough yet to make a good educated decision. We only know 3 things about Barack Obama for sure. In July, before the whole scheme started, he was read in. John Brennan briefed him. In December, when the Intelligence Committee was going to come to him and say, Vladimir Putin did not pick one candidate over the other. He tried to meddle, but he didn't ultimately affect the outcome of the election. He ordered a new intelligence. Don't tell me that. Don't brief me on that. I know you're about to brief me. I don't want to hear that. Do over and come to a different conclusion. And they come to a different conclusion, which is that Donald Trump, that Putin aided Donald Trump specifically, which we now know is based on really bad intelligence. And then in January, he presides over the meeting about how they might still be able to get Mike Flynn. Now, those are 3 serious acts, but we got a lot of gaps here, and we need things from the National Archives. We need things from testimony to see if we can fill in the blanks before we can make a good judgment on Barack Obama.
You know, you had a great point. You talked about unindicted co-conspirator. I think the entire media should be labeled. All of the media that covered this up should be labeled an unindicted co-conspirator. John Solomon, You've been bringing us the truth. It's amazing. What should we be doing? Cleaning house at agencies, FISA warrants. Is anybody going to go to jail? We've got 30 seconds. Please wrap up.
Yeah, I think there's a strong possibility that these grand jurors, if they are in Florida, will bring some charges. I also think you'll see the DNI order a mass reduction of the intelligence apparatus that carry this out. Will be a smaller intelligence agency that doesn't have time to do political dirty tricks, because instead we're just focused on protecting Americans, which is the job we gave them and why we gave them those tools. I think a shrinkage of that intelligence community, that FBI, where we don't need it, where the politics has been, a refocusing of them, and then some indictments to bring accountability. That may be the ultimate panacea for the American people.
Fantastic. Thank you. Where do we best follow your work?
Yeah, justthenews.com, and on social media, Jay Solomon Reports on all platforms.
Thank you, John. All right, we're going to summarize all this in our free economic battle plan. You can get a copy at economicwarroom.com. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.